ארבע? שעה ארבע? Shalom, marhaba, hello. I'm Shani Edri, representing the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology. We are very happy to host you here in our event, Climate Change in the City. I would like to invite Mr. Tom Dandenino, Deputy Director General at our ministry, to welcome you. Please, Tom.
Thank you, Shani. I'll keep it really, really brief, I promise. First of all, I want to apologize that Hila Haddad, the Director General, isn't here. You get me as a sad replacement. Hila, unfortunately, had a personal family emergency and couldn't attend. Our thoughts and prayers are with her and her family. I want to start by saying that we've done a lot of work over the last year at the ministry on the worlds of climate, and then specifically urban-related climate. A lot of the programs that we did on human capital, on artificial intelligence and infrastructure related to artificial intelligence, on our research and development centers in the rural areas of Israel and how they sit together with urban trends in the cities. All that's work that's kind of already been done, and it's great. There's still a lot of work that we need to do. There are programs that we are putting in place in these days, specifically in these areas, calls for proposals with real budgets behind them that are going to help kind of revamp these areas and put the right amounts of budgets in them. I got asked a lot, I was just talking to Ophira about the uncertainty that we're facing right now with the government changing and all of these programs, what's going to happen with them. I made a wisecrack earlier about the elections, and they told me I can't do it, so I'll make a different wisecrack. There's a more nerdy one. With the uncertainty, there's a great story about how Albert Einstein didn't really believe in the uncertainty theory. And he famously said that God doesn't play dice. To which his counterpart, Niels Bohr, replied saying, "Stop trying to tell God what to do." And in that ilk, I think even though there's a lot of uncertainty politically, these programs are here to stay. There's a robust, and we were just talking about this with Ophira, there's a robust layer of public sector bureaucrats that are committed to these programs and are committed to continuing the work on climate-related technologies. And that's maybe the biggest accomplishment that we can attest to over the last year. I want to thank Shlomit Paz, Professor Shlomit Paz, Professor Ophira Ayalon from the University of Haifa, Gabi Appel, of course, from the Vatat, Shani Edri, Avidom from our ministry, and everyone who worked on this panel. Thank you so much.
I would like to invite Professor Avi Domb, the Chief Scientist.
Thank you, Shani. And climate change in the city actually represents what we are doing in our office. I'm saying that climate change in the city is representing what we are doing throughout the years in our office, because it includes health, social studies, agriculture, and energy, and almost everything that we are doing in our ministry. We try to support all kind of research, applied research at the academia, with the purpose or with the objective to have all of these technologies move on either to become an industry or to help the people of Israel. So thank you very much for joining us, and now the floor is for the real speakers.
Thank you, Avi. Now to the really important part of the event. We're going to have two sessions. The first one going to be chaired by Professor Shlomit Paz from the Haifa University, and the second one by Professor Ofira Ayalon, also from Haifa University. I wish you all a fruitful event and enjoy.
Hello everybody, good afternoon. My name is Professor Shlomit Paz. I'm from Haifa University. I'm a climatologist. Actually, I work on climate change issue for 25 years. And for me, as someone who talked about climate change 20 years ago, to see here so many people deal with climate change issues is very exciting. So climate change already has alarming multi-dimensional consequences for humanity, with severe impact on public health, economy, and welfare, and affect especially vulnerable population who are at higher risk. The effect of extreme weather event increased health risks and intensified in cities, for example, in urban heat island. This session will focus on the urban context in Israel, a hot and dry country where over 90% of the population live in cities, with a comparative study from Germany. In the following part, we will hear 5 very interesting presentations on the linkage between the impacts and influences of climate change on the lives of the city population. Each speaker has 10 minutes, and I would like to invite our first speaker, Noga Adler-Stern from the Ministry of Welfare and Social Affairs, and Ella Brand-Levy from the Joint.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to present to you today as part of the Israeli delegation. The purpose of our lecture is to give an overview of climate change adaptation interventions and program promoted by the Ministry of Welfare and Social Affairs, and the main strategic that it uses to strengthen community climate resilience. My name is Noga Adler-Stern, and I'm Director of Community Urban Development in the Community Work Service. And this is Dr. Ella Brand-Levy from Joint Israel that will present with me. Okay. The Ministry of Welfare and Social Affairs serves an average of 14 of Israeli households, most of whom suffer from poverty and social exclusion. Its main goal is to safeguard the welfare and social well-being of the general populations of Israel, to prevent distress and suffering, and to improve social welfare and social mobility. These services are provided in municipalities and institutions throughout the country. Oops. The Welfare Ministry in Israel is one of the first welfare ministries in the world to prepare an adaptation plan for climate change in order to develop and encourage intersectoral collaborations to strengthen vulnerable populations. The rationale be harmed by climate change, but vulnerable populations will be harmed more than others. Therefore, preparation of vulnerable populations is essential to increase national resilience in facing the challenge of climate change. We also believe that developing solutions for vulnerable populations in light of climate change create opportunities to correct issues related to long-standing environmental and climate injustice. No? Okay. One of the departments in the Welfare Ministry is the Community Work Service. Its main mission is to enable communities to initiate positive changes that will bring about social mobility of the community and promote equality and social justice. The goal of the service are increased participation and influence of residents to improve their quality of life in various fields, strengthen social capital, and increase community cohesion and sense of belonging. Yeah. The service is implemented through over 200 municipal units that employ over 600 community of social workers who work with about 50,000 communities. Ability of the community to implement joint action, to react efficiently in times of pressure and crisis, and to influence processes and their future outcomes. Communities that operate in systematic ways to build their resilience know how to get through crisis and uncertainty and to be stronger by doing so.
Okay. Hi, everyone. In order to place the issue of climate change into the crowded agenda of the Welfare Ministry, we adopted 3 strategies. The first one is cross-sectional actions which aim to make the Welfare Ministry a significant player. The second one is top-down actions aimed at preparing an adaptation plan for the ministry that will determine policy. And finally, bottom-up actions that will create awareness among the field workers of the importance of the issue and drive them into actions. I will now explain each of them. Uh-oh. What did they do? Just a minute. Okay. In order to make the Welfare Ministry a relevant player and to actually promote adaptation operation, we promoted partnerships with various government ministries, among them installing solar panels in public housing in association with the Ministry of Construction and Housing, planting urban forestry in disadvantaged neighborhood in association with the National Economic Council, providing solutions to energy poverty in association with the Ministry of Energy, writing a handbook that provides tools to strengthen a vulnerable population in light of climate change, as well as a tool for mapping vulnerable population in the city for the Ministry of Environmental Protection, and participating in climate forum of the President's House. In order to establish ministry policy on climate change, we advanced the writing of the ministry adaptation plan. To this end, we recruited representatives of various departments in the office, and after an intensive learning process, we wrote the adaptation plan, which was presented to the Director General of the office and is currently awaiting her approval. In order to create awareness among the community social workers and encourage them to develop ventures, we gave several lectures and also launched a training course for social workers on the topic of climate change. Just a minute. Social workers from cities all over the country participated in the training course, and the expected outcomes is to develop projects to increase community resilience to climate change. Various projects were developed in the training course include cultivating gardens in shared buildings, establishing an ecological center, acclimatizing elderly people's homes, establishing a workspace for furniture renovation and donation, shading streets with high percentage of elderly population, raising awareness to community resilience for climate change among urban emergency team, and establishing a climate patrol. In conclusion, community resilience is critical to strengthen vulnerable population in light of climate change. In our work at the Welfare Ministry, we started by promoting a variety of action to strengthen vulnerable population. There is still a lot of work ahead of us, but the seeds have already been planted. Thank you for listening.
Any questions from Oprah and or Ella? Okay. So thank you very much for the interesting presentation. Our next speaker is Dr. Aviva Peters from Sami Shamoun College. Aviva will present her project on the impact of urban tree shading on mitigating climatic conditions in urban environments. Aviva, please.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Wow. Maybe I'll take a, yeah, I think. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aviva Peters, and I'll be talking about the impact of urban tree shading on mitigating adverse climatic conditions in urban environments, and primarily in a nutshell, I'll be talking about trees and more trees, and shading of trees. It is a research funded by the German Research Foundation and has several partners from the Technical University of Munich in Germany, partners from Volcani Institute and from the Dead Sea and Arava Institute and from Al-Quds Public Society. The Israeli government at 2022 decided or approved a national plan of shading. And the idea of this national plan is to, the target, which is a very big target, is to plant 450,000 trees and to reach by that a 70% shading on areas where pedestrians walk, on sidewalks. And this is a very, a very high target to reach, since if people, Israelis here probably know what's the situation, what's the state of Israeli streets in urban environments. So why is urban shading so important? So you probably will recognize this street, Rothschild Promenade, and whoever lives in that area, or people here who live in dry zones, will know that if you are walking, if you as a pedestrian walk under the shading of the trees, there's a very big difference in the way you feel in relation to standing in an exposed space. And you can have in the north there is one of those exposed spaces, the Habima Square, which is not such a fun place to be in or to stand there, especially in the summer months, for example, in August midday. And this has to do really with a concept or with an index which is called the thermal comfort. And the thermal comfort is the zone where people actually feel comfortable. And of course, it is adjusted to different places. And this thermal comfort is made out of all kinds of parameters. One of them is the air temperature. And actually, the air temperature doesn't change that much when one is underneath the trees and outside of the trees. But there is another thing which plays an important role, and that is the radiation from the surfaces. And this is where the trees actually play a very important role in cooling these surfaces. So you can see here actually in the light blue and the yellow graph, which actually relate to the air temperature underneath the trees or when standing in an exposed space, the difference is not that large. But this is the main thing. This is the main player, which is the way people feel when they're standing underneath the trees. And again, I'll emphasize it again and again. It has to do with the shading and with the cooling of the surfaces, different surfaces that you have in an urban environment, such as an asphalt or a sidewalk or the grass. So in Israel, this is of course important because most of the population in Israel lives in urban environments, and most of the urban environments are located in either hot arid or hot humid areas. But this is not only the issue of Israeli cities, since 1/3 of the global population is living in drylands. And nowadays, we have really an accelerated process of urbanization and an accelerated process of desertification, which means that we are not going to have more and more people living in cities, but we are going to have more people living in cities in drylands. Therefore, if we want people really to spending more time outside, if we want to have walkable cities, and we don't just want people staying indoors, using air conditionings, but we want to have active, we want to have livable cities, we really have to do something about enhancing the thermal comfort. So this research involved developing several urban tree labs in Israel and in Munich. I'll be concentrating on the urban tree lab, which was developed in the park of Samit Shamon College in Beersheba, a city located in an arid climate. And the trees were monitored constantly for about a year for the tree condition, for the tree growth, for the soil, for the environmental conditions. And my part was concentrating really on the effect of cooling, on the effect of tree shading. I didn't say in the beginning, but I actually come from the world of geoinformatics. This is my main research team, but here I'll be talking about urban 3D modeling, mainly of trees. The urban tree labs were really covered with different sensors, whether it's soil sensors or sensors that monitor the urban growth. Remotely sensed data was collected, and of course meteorological data. And my part concentrated on something which is called LiDAR data, laser scanning, which is a type of remote sensing, which actually creates what you see on the left, something which is called point cloud data. It creates a very high density of points. You can get a point for like a centimeter. So you can really model in a very accurate, very high accuracy different objects in the environment. And this can be trees, but it can be buildings and electricity poles. And of course, this data, which are millions of points, has to be pre-processed in order to reach the trees. But once you have these very accurate 3D models, you can start extracting different attributes. And here we can see, for example, the footprints of the trees, whether it is in Beersheba or in Munich. And of course, if we have the footprints, this is one of the things that will help in order to, for example, simulate the patterns of the shading patterns. But one can extract a lot of other attributes that have to do really with the structure of the tree, the structure of the stem, or the height of the tree, and the volume of the canopy, and the shaded area, the shaded density, leaf area index, a lot of things. In addition to this, we also were doing thermography, which is thermal imagery, and you can see here, this is actually emphasizes very well the differences in the temperature of the surfaces. And I'm not talking about a single tree standing by its own, but really on groups of trees. So these groups of trees really have an effect on the temperature of the surfaces, as opposed to surfaces that are exposed. And whoever lives in a hot country really knows that very well, the big difference. In addition to this localized measurements, we also were looking spatially to see how different patterns change in space, and those patterns also change in time. So for example, if we are looking at the changes in the air temperature, or the changes in the thermal comfort, or the changes in the patterns of shading. So the main thing really that I wish to really convey, and I hope this lecture conveyed, is really we do not want these things, and these things appear again and again in Israel in cities. It is not enough, and this brings me back to this national plan. It is an amazing leap forward, I mean, to do this and to go really planting those hundreds of thousands of trees where pedestrians are walking. But this is not enough, because what we need is really qualitative shading. We need shading that is continuous, because this doesn't do it. So for that, this is the type of shading that we are looking for. And it's very important because really, sometimes you have the situations, and it's not sometimes, a lot of times, that you have the bench and you have the tree next to it, but actually the tree is not shading the bench. So this type of research helps to understand really how to optimize the layout of the trees. Where should they be placed? In what distance from the buildings they should be placed? What side of the road they should be placed? What should be the density of the canopy, and what type of tree do we want? All this will really help to support urban planners and decision makers in really mitigating heat stress in public open spaces and reaching these healthier cities, walkable, livable, sustainable cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aviva. Any question? Yes, please.
Maybe just really quickly. Sorry, maybe just really quickly. I know that some cities plant a bunch of trees. I think Palo Alto plants the same row of palm trees, and then they die, and then they plant them again, and then they die, and they do this every year over and over again. How many of the trees actually end up surviving, and where does the whole question of, or where does the question of kind of the types of trees and whether they're kind of endemic to the area play into this?
So, I can't answer the question of how many actually survive, but I can tell you that there are lots of initiatives. For example, in what's called the Minhal, how do you call that in English? The administration, yeah. So there have been really several research and then bylaws on, for example, they have in the Tel Aviv and also in the Tel Aviv municipality, they have a whole booklet of the trees that should be planted, which trees are really adapted for those places. And let's put it this way, palms is an issue. I come from the south, and Beersheba is a good example where they really like to put a lot of palms. But palms, they might be beautiful, and they would give you an amazing effect if they're in a grove, one next to the other. But not in a parking lot, and not in the boulevards in Beersheba are full with palms. And we've actually been monitoring the palms, and they don't do it. But there is I think that nowadays, and also in the Ministry of Housing, there is really the understanding. There's more the understanding of the types of trees that should be, and what trees are suitable. And I hope we are going in the right direction.
I would like to add something more, because if the ministry is giving money to plant trees, it is also very important to the maintenance of these trees. So it's the water, it's the gardening department, so it's not enough to plant a tree. And that answers part of your questions, how many die.
Will be my last sentence, and then I'll give the podium for the next speaker. But the image that I showed before, which really is a very beautiful photo, but this is a lot of times the case that they don't give enough space for the tree to grow into a real mature shading tree, or they don't trim it correctly, or it's not given enough water, and then trees die.
Thank you very much, Aviva. The next presentation is recorded. The speaker is Dr. Astrid Drake from the Technical University of Munich. Astrid will talk about the potential of urban grid infrastructures for mitigation and adaptation of cities to climate change.
Hello everybody, thank you for listening. My name is Asad Reichel. I present our work on behalf of my colleagues Mohamed Rahman, Thomas Rötzer and Stefan Pauleit of the Technical University of Munich. Our work and potential of urban green infrastructure, UGI for mitigation and adaptation of cities to climate change, focuses on research Munich on trees and the ecosystem services that they provide. Urbanization leads to a lot of global urban challenges like the degradation of natural resources, loss of biodiversity and ecosystem services, and then the increase of anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions, which are 80% of urban region. Also other factors are increasing like heat waves, droughts, hurricanes, flash floodings, but also urbanization leads to high density of built-up areas, concentration of infrastructure and people in these built-up areas, and this has often a determinantal impact.
Maybe we'll try to go ahead and then hope to hear it again from the beginning. So our next speaker is Esti Cohen-Liss from the Ministry of Construction and Housing. Esti will present her project on the construction and housing policy in Israel in the area of climate change.
Hi. Do you hear me? No? You need this one? עכשיו? עכשיו כן. שני יותר טוב. I'm very exciting. I'm Esti Cohen-Liss. I'm an architect. I'm director of the Department of Construction, Housing, and Engineering Development in the Israeli Ministry of Construction and Housing. That's responsible, among other, to ensuring the current and future housing needs of Israeli citizens and residents are met. The ministry handled the planning, construction, and marketing of residential neighborhoods throughout the country and provide public housing for those in need. In planning for Israel's future housing needs, we must take into account the extremely growth rate of Israeli population, which stands at approximately 1.8, compared to the total growth rate of entire OECD, which is 0.4. As a result, in just few decades, Israeli population is extreme to double itself from 9 to 5 million today, about 20 million inhabited in 2065. Considering the country's relatively small size, that would bring the destiny over almost 1,000 people to square kilometer, similar to the current population destiny of Bangladesh. The vast majority of Israeli population, as we heard, 92% is urban. Planning for the needs of large, heterogeneous, dense urban centers require both innovation and multidisciplinary specialization. While the climate change in our region has challenged the issue of planning, it is also provides some opportunities. We have witnesses significant increase in the annual number of the hot days and night, and we expect to see increase in the length and intensity of heat waves in the near future. Environmental challenges include the exacerbation of urban heat island effect, and diminishing of available permeable land for sake and replenishing the country's already depleted aquifer. We have already been witnessing a significant increase in the number of flood affecting urban area in both intensity and duration. Okay. Relying on the confluence on environmental and urbanism principle, the Ministry of Construction and Housing partnered with local organizations to establish a measuring tool for sustainable neighborhood, defining qualitative criteria for such issues as walkability, shade, use of renewable energy, and water management to tool enable us to plan and build a better environment for a denser, drier, and safer future. On the basis on this tool, along with written guidelines and education literature published to assist practitioners, we are able to disseminate the value and the best practice to the constantly growing circle of professionals. Now I talk about the trees that we heard about. A case in point is the issue of urban shade. While encouraging pedestrian and cycling by providing a shade, increasing the tree cover in urban area also serve to mitigate effect to urban heat island, as well as providing additional biologic service such as pest control, improve air quality, and noise education, as we heard. To achieve the effectively, we published new guidelines for streetcase design, covering soil type, sidewalk design, and underground infrastructure layout. Under the new guideline, we were able to increase the available space for wood structure by 200%, in enabling each tree to proceed a significant increased soil foliage cover. Oh, okay, just a minute. Encoding the need of sustainable development into law has been an integral part of currently proceeding writing Israelis new building code. The new legislative opus incorporated the largest knowledge regarding sustainable practice for energy, water, land use, waste reducing air, quality, and other issues necessary for adaptation to the needs of tomorrow. In the process of rewriting the Israeli construction legacy, the shaping of the new code stressed a profession for adoption of international standards. In the effort to both simply and standardize and technical and qualitative requirement for construction elements with a view towards international cooperation and commerce. While Israel has adopted many international standards, helping us to find proven ways to conserve energy and minimize the disruption of natural ecosystem, there are some areas where Israel continues to lead the world, having pioneered the legacy regarding solar water heating in the 1960s. Current legislation seeks to incorporate the variety of innovation to modern system to provide low-cost hot water with low environmental impact. Yeah, one back. In conclusion, I would like to present a recent project that Noga talked about it, or Ella talked about it before. Incorporated sustainable practices with social value. In our capacity as a providers of housing and those in need, we have determined that low-income families often suffer from energetic poverty, spending a large portion of their available income on climatizing their home than those with a higher income. Installing PV units in 300,500 existing public housing buildings will provide support for populations already more valuable than other to climate crisis, and will reduce their expenditure in increased use of renewable energy. I believe that it is the interest of all to raise the fortune of the people, of all people, while looking toward the future with hope. In the Jewish tradition, we are told that while no individual is obligated to complete all the work, neither are they free to desist from it. Together we will succeed. Thank you.
The next presentation will be given by Orit Gano from the Ministry of Energy. Orit will present her project on sustainable energy in the cities, in the city as a solution for climate change impact. Orit, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Actually, I'm very excited. It is very exciting to be here at the Israeli Pavilion for the first time in COP27 in Egypt, which is a great partner of Israel. So let's talk a bit about local authorities and climate change from the energy perspective. Well, since 80% of the global GDP are produced in urban areas, most of the greenhouse gas emissions come from energy consumption in cities. This trend will increase during the coming years, while today 50% of the population live in cities. In 2050, this number will be 66%. As was mentioned before several times by Professor Shlomit Paz and other panelists, in Israel, the urban sector is even bigger. More than 92% live in the cities. And now let's talk a bit about Israel. Israel is a very unique place, not only because I'm Israeli and I'm proud of my country. Israel is an energy island. And we at the Ministry of Energy, we work very hard to promote strategic projects aiming to change this reality. We aim to develop projects to increase connectivity with neighboring countries such as Jordan and Egypt, promoting interconnector cable to import and export electricity from the European Union, the EastMed pipeline project to export natural gas, etc. Israel, unlike many other Western countries, in Israel the population is growing 2% each year, and remember this number because I will talk about it a bit later. We don't have enough available land, but we have lots of sun. Lots of sun means PV, photovoltaic, so we have a challenge to build photovoltaic panels in Israel. We are well known as the startup nation, having energy independence, mainly thanks to the natural gas reservoirs discovered offshore Israel 20 years ago. Aiming to deal with these challenges, the Ministry of Energy traditionally purely was involved in regulating and policy making. Headquarter ministry without any representation in districts. And the new focus during the last years is require us to have a new focus and being engaged more in the local authorities. At the 2019 COP conference in Madrid, this important work was presented and published, Climate Emergency and the Urban Opportunity. The main conclusion of this work was that in order to reach zero greenhouse gas emissions in the world, cities need to play a key role in the planning and implementation processes. Therefore, countries should put municipalities in the center of the strategy of transition to low carbon economy. It is necessary to promote new collaborations in order to build professional capabilities in the local authorities. These are the main, These are the main policy initiatives of the Ministry of Energy. Back to Israel. 30% renewables in 2030. You may think that it's not such as an ambitious goal. But remember that I talked before about 2% growth, so taking it into account, it's a very, very ambitious goal, and we're working very hard to promote and to achieve it. Another goal is removing barriers and accelerating the planning processes in Israel, securing energy production and usage. We also prepare ourselves to 2050 goals, preparing the infrastructure needed, in the manner of technologies, supporting startups, funding fields of research, etc. Okay, so you can ask me, very nice, what does it have to do with the local authorities or municipalities in Israel? Well, most of these policy initiatives meet in the cities. The municipalities and the urban areas play a key role in aiming these goals. And so, since 2021, there's a new strategic mission in the Ministry of Energy referring to the local authorities focusing these fields: energy efficiency, renewable energy, electric mobility, electric cars, and the needed infrastructure to promote it, and smart grid management. We created partnerships between different government ministries, the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Environmental Protection, and the Ministry of Energy, of course, creating guidelines for sustainable energy and climate plans, explaining exactly what to do, what they need to do in order to promote the energy transition. There's also an accelerator supporting more than 60 cities by 2024. We already supported 17 cities in 2022 and 20 more in 2023 and 2024 each. We funded new roles, new positions of energy managers in 11 city clusters, providing professional guidance to more than 100 local authorities out of 260 existing in Israel. And we provided professional assistance to 8 local authorities to become zero-energy cities. In addition, we promoted local authorities' options to create public-private partnerships in projects in order to become electricity providers. Okay. 1 minute. So now let's talk a bit about money. We set a government resolution with more than $300 million to implement the National Energy Efficiency Plan, $150 million loan fund for PV on municipal buildings, over than 100 cities, $30 million grants for impact projects, giving the local authorities the option to promote sustainable energy, and more than $60 million grants to sustainable energy projects in low socioeconomic local authorities, as was mentioned before, and grants for energy communities as well. So maybe to conclude, I know I have a few seconds. The main issue, I think, in this regard is that most local authorities, not only in Israel, deal with lack of manpower and many other daily challenges such as sewage, waste, etc. Therefore, the simulation of energy transition and promoting sustainable energy in cities is challenging. There are few cities in each country that are strong enough to promote these types of issues. So our common goal should be to raise awareness and to include this issue in the policy and strategy in all cities all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ori. Yes, of course.
Good afternoon. My name is Doron Auerbach, Professor of Chemistry and Energy at Bar Ilan University in Israel, and I represent here in the academic Israel community, scientific community working on energy. And I think that a very important strength of Israel is the fact that 33 research groups from 7 universities are organized under the umbrella of the Israel National Energy Research Consortium. And we set collaboration with neighbors. We have a wonderful collaboration with Morocco. And we are networked with many countries in energy research. And I believe that we have solutions how we can help the country to reach the goals for 2050. So I believe that it's really possible to electrify Israel without signature of carbon. Now, today at 7, we will have an energy event here in this pavilion, and we'll describe some capabilities, some model of binational collaboration in the Middle East. The Middle East can be a paradise from many points of view. It can be an energy supplier for many countries, and there's a lot of good options in our region. So I think that here we have a very important point of strength, and this evening we'll describe the situation and the capabilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Time is running, so please, you can ask Orit later, okay? It is a, sorry. We will go ahead since time is running, and maybe we'll have time to see the recorded presentation later. It is a pleasure to invite my dear friend and colleague, Professor Ofira Ayalon from my university, to lead the next sub-session.
Thank you, Shlomit. At the beginning, with all the thanks, we omitted Dr. Maya Negev, who was the organizer of all these sessions. So thank you, Maya. And I invite you to the floor just to put things into perspective. The first part of this session dealt with, physical and social aspects of the role of the cities in climate mitigation and climate adaptation, or adaptation to climate change. And this session is dealing more with resilience and health. So, Maya, you are very much welcome. And the floor is yours, and this one is yours, and good luck.
No, I don't. I like to move. Okay, it's fine.
Thank you very much. Shukran Jazilan. It's really nice to be here and to meet you all. Charafna, name מאוד. Let's start. Climate risk is made of several components according to the IPCC: vulnerability, hazard, and exposure to climate hazards. And we know that these are affecting every human being on the planet. We are all impacted by climate change today, but some are more impacted and suffer more than others. So we already have a big gap in climate risk between the stronger and the more vulnerable populations in the world, and this gap is widening as we speak. It happens at the global level, between the global north and the global south, and it happens within countries and within cities. And this is the topic of my talk. Risk is unequally distributed between cities, and this inequality is increasing. So I will present two case studies from cities in Israel, Haifa and Shfar'am. The first one is a Mediterranean coastal city, the city of Haifa, where our university is based. And we are at the top of the Carmel Mountain. You're most welcome to visit. This is a study that we conducted together with Professor Shlomit Paz and Dr. Moti Zohar at the university. It's the third largest city in Israel. It's very diverse. It has Jews and Arabs. It's fairly affluent, socioeconomic status 7 of 10. And we wanted to understand what are the climate risks in Haifa. And in order to do that, we used a multidimensional approach and a mixed methods study. So first of all, we looked at social vulnerabilities. We looked at where are the elderly people. This is really important for the municipality because elderly people are particularly vulnerable to climate risks. And we looked at where are the people who live in poverty or lower socioeconomic status, and we see that they are downtown. Haifa is kind of opposite to normal coastal towns where the affluent populations live at the coast, where it's really nice. But here we have a huge chemical and refinery zone, and therefore nobody wants to live next to the beach, which is not even accessible. So the poor people live downtown, and the more affluent populations, the more you go up in the elevation, the more affluent neighborhoods. Right, what we see here is a mapping of heat waves, of temperature, and we see again that downtown is more vulnerable also to heat waves. So remember, it's people who suffer from poverty, which also means energy poverty. In Israel, a city with not much urban shade, air conditioning is the typical protection method in heat waves, and people who can't afford it are more exposed, more vulnerable, and it even leads to higher morbidity and mortality during heat waves. We also wanted to add the public's perception into our assessment, and we asked people, are you feeling that you are at risk during heat waves? And this survey of a representative sample of the population is shown here, and it's quite interesting that in a country with pretty low climate awareness, people in the downtown are quite aware that health is, that heat waves are a risk to their health and well-being. So moving on, we asked people if there is a dangerous event like a climate extreme event, can you rely on others? Can you rely on your neighbors? Do you feel that you can rely on your municipality? And in general, do you have community resilience and social resilience in times of crisis? Because we know that social resilience and people who live next to you are the front line of help in times of extreme events. And interestingly, the people who live downtown, as we say, they suffer from poverty and energy poverty. They are more exposed to heat, and they are aware they are more exposed to heat. Interestingly, they also have higher community resilience. So the people who live maybe in smaller housing units, closer to each other, maybe support each other more. By the way, these are also more traditional communities, where also Orthodox and Arab communities live with perhaps better social networks, social ties. They have a better community resilience. It doesn't mean that they are resilient. It means that the municipality can work with the community to help it build the capacity to face the changing climate. When we finished the study in Haifa, we presented the results to the municipality. They were well received, and they informed the Haifa adaptation plan. But we felt that we were doing the research detached from the policymakers. And that led me to kind of change approach in the next case study that I'm going to present from Shefa-Amer, or in Hebrew, Shfar'am. This is an Arab city in the north of Israel. It's also mixed, but the mix here is Muslim, Christian, and Druze. Lower socioec, 3 out of 10, smaller city. And this is a project led by the Galilee Society. It's an Arab NGO and research and development center based in Shefa-Amer. Here we decided to work on the vulnerability assessment and assessing climate vulnerability and capacity with the municipality from day one. So this is really a collaborative project of intersectoral organizations, the university, the Galilee Society, which is the leader, and the municipality. And here too, we are looking at multi-dimensional risks and capacities. For example, we looked at heat stress. Unfortunately, you cannot see it here, but I'm happy to send the results if you're interested. We identified hotspots at the city level, really micro hotspots. This is a 30 by 30 meter grid of heat stress, and we can see that within the city there are places that are much hotter than others. Some of them are the sports fields, the football fields, which are synthetic grass, and they get much hotter than elsewhere. From a public health perspective, this is very worrying, because we want people to exercise, to do sports, to be together, and to meet people. And we see that the public spaces here are hotter than anywhere else. This is very worrying, and there is stuff to do about it, for example, shading. But in Shefa-Amer, like most Arab towns, and actually most towns in Israel, there are hardly any trees, so they have a small pine forest in this area. but in general, there is an extreme lack of shade and lack of space for that. And really, cities in Israel have to be creative regarding how to make public spaces climate resilient, and maybe go outside of the streets, go into, for example, schools that can be community centers afternoon, etc. We really have to think outside of the box because we are so dense, but we still have unused spaces, so this is homework for all of us. In our survey, again, asking the participants, the residents, the participants say that they worry about climate change and they perceive that they have low social resilience. So they basically feel that they cannot rely much on neighbors or community or the municipality in times of crisis, and this is an important message for the municipality. We've also asked them what are the main risks, in your opinion, in the city, what is worrying you most? And people said that crime and violence worry them most, and this is not surprising. We have this crime and violence major issue in Arab towns in Israel. But what was surprising was that heat waves and climate change were among the top 4 issues that people are worried about. So there is awareness. Literally everybody in the city know that climate change is happening. About a half say that they started feeling it already and that it already had some health consequences from extreme heat. And awareness is something that we can work with to develop capacity. And this is what we aim to do together with the community and the municipality. Finally, I would like to bring the health message across from a more global perspective, and this is a part of my involvement in the International Society for Environmental Epidemiology, and we are a part of the Global Climate and Health Alliance, and we've presented recommendations for COP27, and it's really important to know that health is almost absent from the negotiations, and that health should be a part of the negotiations, and that taking the health lens in promoting the correct climate policy during mitigation, adaptation, resilience, and loss and damage can have many, many benefits for the whole world population. Health is a major concern for every human being on the planet, and it should definitely be a concern at the COP, and there is a lot of potential during the climate negotiations to improve the health of every single person on the planet, and especially those who are most vulnerable and need it most. So thank you very much. Shukran, toda rabah. Happy to answer questions after. I'm going to be here.
Thank you again. I would like to ask Dr. Isabella Karkis from the Ministry of Health to talk about nice things like cardiovascular, hospitalization, and severe high temperatures in Israel. So the floor is yours and the 10 minutes are yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks. My name is Dr. Isabella Karkis. I am an environmental epidemiologist of Ministry of Health, State of Israel. And my talk today about relationship between cardio and cerebrovascular hospitalizations and the climate indices in Israeli sites. And it's the first report about our big work related to understanding of hospitalizations and association with different climatic diseases. And sorry. World Health Organization shows a picture that characterizes types of different population at risk and the association with health effects and climate change. And this work is adopted in 2021, and we show is schematic explanation of the relation between influence of climate and health status of populations. But we also show scientific information from some number of reviews from 2016. It's 4 big reviews about relation between climate influence and health effects. And it's important to note that most of the information relates mainly to mortality, total number of deaths or cause-specific number of deaths. But in addition, it's important to note that the reference has been made the climate effects on public health, and it's not reference about urban environment. Following this understanding of lack of reference to an urban environment with its unique characteristics, a number of large cities in Israel that are at different geographical and climate areas were selected. It's a different populations with different number of total population and density, very different density from 4 big cities in different areas in Israel, from north up to south area of Israel. And we also include in this information as socio-economical index, that is Tel Aviv is higher index 10 from 10, and lower index in Jerusalem 10 from 2 from 10 based on information of Central Statistical Bureau of Israel. And in this work we include all total population in 4 cities in period of climate and hospitalization data is 11 years overall, from 2010 up to 2020. And health effects or health outcomes is a list of diagnoses, what is the cause of hospitalization, and is a list of overall hospitalizations is here, is related to cardio and cerebrovascular hospitalizations. And in addition, we also include in our work here covariates as gender, 3 groups of age, and address of living based on city, and date and duration of hospitalizations. Regarding climate indicators, consultation is carried out with specialists of the meteorological services of Israel. The most accepted approaches and models adapted to the types of health data are used. and is the preliminary results now. We demonstrate here four cities with distribution of the average of daily temperature and the distribution of average number of hospitalization due to cardio and cerebrovascular diseases. As you can see that 3 cities from 4 in this slide have maximum average daily temperature is same. Only Beersheba is a city in southern Israel. A maximum temperature is very high, but if we compare its minimum average temperatures, we can see that Jerusalem is lower temperature in between 4 cities here. And the conclusion from this slide that cities very different, also by temperature range and also hospitalization range. And this picture is crude picture of association between temperature and hospitalizations. And it's possible to see that results requires future analysis for each city. After a crude look of the findings, we thought it will be appropriate to show the findings of different models using a list of climate indicators based on temperature message, and we can see here that is age group 70 plus age is a tendency of relationship and risk of hospitalization due to cardio and cerebrovascular diseases is very high in a home city as Beersheba. It's also, we can see that in summer, a special effect is also found in age group 70 plus with same tendency, and very important and confuse result that is sensitive population, especially in summer. We can see results in females. And in conclusion, we can see that is association between climate indicators based on temperature data to cardio and cerebrovascular hospitalizations in different cities. The effect of a temperature in these hospitalizations in urban environment may be different due to different climate zones from small areas, and the effect of temperature in Israel is manifest in age group 70 plus, and is very intensive and with high power in summer. And also, despite the identical policy of hospitalizations, but differences in reports of hospitalization from different hospitals maybe cause bias in the value of relative risks. We report preliminary results now, and we will continue to understand the association between climate indices and different types of hospitalizations in urban environment for a better response of health system related to climate change. Many thanks to my colleagues, and thank you for attention.
Hello, my name is Sinaya Netanyahu, and I'm a program manager for Environment and Health Impact Assessment in the European Center for Environment and Health at WHO Regional Office for Europe. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak about climate change and urban resiliency. Well, climate change is already impacting health in many different ways. We need to keep accelerating our efforts and move from ambition to action in building resilience to the impacts of climate change, to ensure uninterrupted
We'll give it one more try. יעבור אליי, לא? זה קור פה, מה זה?
Hello, my name is Sinaya Netanyahu, and I'm a program manager for Environment and Health Impact Assessment in the European Center for Environment and Health at WHO Regional Office for Europe. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak about climate change and urban resiliency. Well, climate change is already impacting health in many different ways. We need to keep accelerating our efforts and move from ambition to action in building resilience to the impacts of climate change, to ensure uninterrupted health services when they are most needed. The IPCC stated already that cumulative scientific evidence in unequivocal climate change is a threat to human well-being and planetary health. Any further delay in concentrated anticipatory global action on adaptation and mitigation will miss the brief and rapidly closing window of opportunity to secure a livable and sustainable future for all. The IPCC Working Group 2 stated also that the economic benefits on human health from air quality improvement arising from mitigation action can be of the same order of magnitude as mitigation costs and potentially even larger. So it goes hand in hand. The climate agenda is definitely a health agenda. Those WHO Europe and the Bonn office provide evidence-based policy advice, generating evidence on the health co-benefits from decarbonization and offering guidance and also tools, including on heat health action and other climate change induced events. One example is the UN FCCC and WHO Health and Climate Change Country Profile, which gives an overview of critical areas for action to combat these threats and provide links to available resources. Developed in in collaboration with national health services, they summarize evidence of the climate hazards and health risks facing countries. They track national progress in addressing the health threats from climate change and highlight opportunities for gaining health benefits from climate mitigation action. Since publishing the first series of profiles in 2015, globally over 80 countries have participated in this project. This year we published also the country profiles of the first group of participating countries from the European region, including Israel, for the current 2021-22 global series. Another example of activity is the health program launched at COP26 last year, but now officially become the Alliance for Transformative Action on Climate and Health, known also by the name ATTACH. It invites countries to make commitments to increase the resilience of the health sector and to reduce carbon emission from healthcare. More than 60 member states have already submitted formal commitments to the COP26 presidency and beyond on the climate resilience and sustainability of their healthcare systems. And 9 out of the 53 member states in our region have submitted it as well. The program presents a huge opportunity to make progress on addressing the challenges that climate change poses for health. We now must turn this political commitment into action at scale and speed, not only in the countries that have already signed up to the program, but also to drive this agenda forward across our region and promote accountability for all. It works to realize the ambitions set at 26 and 27 COPs, but also in our WHO European regional committees from last and this year to build climate resilience and sustainable health system using collective power of WHO member states to drive this agenda forward at pace and scale and promote the integration of climate change and health nexus into prospective national, but also sub-regional and city level plans. Another effort that is being initiated is the HEAC, Health in Climate Working Group, and it continues to be an important forum to steer the European climate change agenda with the health lens. It also serves as a platform for preparing the contributions on climate change and health for ministers of health, but also for the ministers of the environment of 53 member states in the region under the environment and health process that we lead here at the Bonn office. This process has started in 1988, so it's for more than 34 years that we are leading this process. And in recent years, as I mentioned, we also included the climate and health. We have Dr. Orna Matzner from Israel, who is new elected co-chair of the HEAC. A zero regret and HEAC paper on scaling up action on climate change mitigation and adaptation for health serves as a guide and role model for our member states to identify policy options that can maximize, or more specifically optimize, the benefits for health and the environment, and indicate areas for action and collaboration across sectorial boundaries and social actors. Also, investments in healthier environments, creating low-carbon societies, and building climate-resilient health systems are essential ingredients in achieving this agenda and offer some of the best health and economic returns for our societies. When it comes to cities, urban planning, risk governance, and also resilience have become increasingly important pathways to promote and protect public health at a local level. Climate change, inadequately planned urbanization, and environmental degradation have left many cities vulnerable to disasters. The COVID-19 pandemic has further highlighted the links between health and urban environment and the relevance of sustainable and resilient planning. Various global frameworks, as you all know, have been established to address sustainable development, urban environments and resilience, and awareness of the local benefits associated with implementation of this global agenda is increasing. WHO's recent project on protecting environments and health by building urban resilience aim to support local authorities and decision makers to reflect on the environment, climate, and health dimensions of local preparedness and resilience, and to promote the application of urban planning approaches to establish safe, healthy, and sustainable cities. The 4 reports outline how to build forward better and apply environmental and infrastructural planning as an important pathway towards building urban resilience, which gives also climate change, given the climate change and environmental challenges. So with that, I have touched a few actions, and we have that we at WHO have taken. Obviously, there are many more actions to be taken, and I invite you here to please feel free to engage with the WHO representative in the WHO Health Pavilion, but also online. I wish you all from Bonn a successful meeting and meaningful event. Thank you.
No questions for Sinaya. I know that the time is already ran off, so I will take my floor and make a very quick presentation. I will not be able to go into all the details that I wanted to share with you. I want to thank once again the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology, and to start by concluding that it is all about the money. And what I would like to show you today is just a brief intro to a study that we have conducted for the municipality of Tel Aviv-Yafo. They initiated this research, and their thought was, what will be the price of inaction? Yaron, it will be in your exam, so please. The idea was, what will be the cost of inaction when it comes to to the heat issues of climate change? So the heat and heat waves, we are not discussing floods, fires, cold waves, or anything like that. So we wanted to isolate the specific issue of heat and its impact on the city's economy. That was the idea. So I will not go into the entire, assumptions and things that we put on the table for that. Just want to say that we have decided to use the RCP 4.5 and 8.5, meaning that if we take and we studied many scientific papers, just to be on the same page with you when we're talking about RCP 4.5, as to our study, we're going to deal with a 1.5 increase in temperature in the year 2050, and with 25 additional hot days a year, and 3 days with extreme heat. That is the case when we're talking about 4.5, and when we're talking about RCP 8.5, you can see that the temperature increases with more heat waves and more extreme heat. Now, what we did was to do a top-down analysis and a bottom-up analysis. All the costs that I'm going to show here are damages in 2020 prices projected for 2050. So when we do the top-down analysis, we have the entire GDP of the State of Israel. We know what is the share of the GDP of Tel Aviv in this segment. So we can, and we have some some studies that project what will be the impact of warming and climate, specific additional heat waves. So we can take the national GDP and transfer it into the city GDP. So we will not go into these assumptions, but you can see here and again, we did all kinds of benefit transfer from all kinds of studies, and we try to adjust it to the city of Tel Aviv. So you can see that altogether, when we do this top-down analysis, we're going to, we're going to lose 1 to 2% of the GDP when we're talking about the different RCPs. And if we try to put the money, the dollar sign on it, or the new Israeli sign on it, so you can see that when we're talking about RCP 4.5, we're talking about 1.2 billion shekels a year of damage. And if we're talking about the 8.5, we're talking about 2.5 billion. And again, we have all kinds of adjustments. I'm not going to go into that. When we do the bottom-up analysis, we have to be very careful because many studies in general project what will be the economic impact, but they do not separate or they do not isolate specific impacts, and we are dealing again with heat and heat waves. And what we could, pinpoint was the issue of increased risk, and we just discussed it, of mortality and morbidity, the increase of energy consumption, and if we're talking about energy consumption, of course we're talking about externalities from energy consumption. So you have to realize what will be the energy mix to produce electricity in 2050, and what will be the external cost of this action. And of course, to add to that, the decrease in labor productivity. Okay, people go and work in air-conditioned offices, so we do not expect a major decrease in their productivity. But if you think of the city of Tel Aviv, and you have all kinds of, all kinds of shops in the street, and people, it's not just shopping malls, it's also streets and all these. So these are the ones that are going to be very much affected from these scenarios that we have analyzed. These issues of mortality, morbidity, energy, and labor, they are 90% of all the costs that we have managed to gather from literature. And if we dive into these numbers, so you can see, I'm not going to, I will just pass it. So you can see all the numbers are in 1,000 new Israeli shekels per year. So we're talking like $600 million per year when we're talking about RCP 4.5, and almost double when we're talking about RCP 8.5, and this is the city of Tel Aviv, okay? Try to imagine what this can do to a city that has no adaptation plan, no capacity to treat these people, and of course the more vulnerable people, to be affected from that is people. We have done some sensitivity analysis. It's of course people for the southern parts of Tel Aviv, the less, so the poorer get even poorer. When we're talking about energy, so you can see here again the issue of increase in energy demand to cool the places, and also the externalities related to the use of electricity. And another topic will be the issue of tourism. People from Europe love to come to Tel Aviv because it's very pleasant. If the city will not be pleasant to be visited by tourists, it will lose money. And this is the sum of that we estimated of the cost of damage of all the revenues from tourism. Also, the well-being of people. This is also an issue that is being discussed now and studied, how you can put monetary, tax on well-being of people. And we have found literature from France talking about the well-being of people in cities suffering from heat and heat waves. And if we sum up the total estimates, you can see that we come up with, when we talk about the bottom up, we're talking about 1.5 million to 2.1, and if we're talking about top down, we're talking 2 to 4 billion shekels a year just from heat and heat waves. And now, at this point, the city of Tel Aviv is going to the city mayor and explain about these figures and have now the, the check to start acting and making all kinds of policy and adaptation plans, because they can show what will be the price of inaction. So I think I will conclude with that, and I will conclude the session by saying two things. First, I want to thank, three. First, I want to thank all the participants and all the presenters. Mind you that all the presenters that were on this stage were women. So please, and another thing that we saw is how crucial is the role of cities when it comes to the issue of climate change and adaptation to climate change. I'm not talking about mitigation because most of the session really dealt with adaptation. So we are pretty sure that the cities that have this ability and accessibility to all these poor people and all the people that need the comfort and the help of the community, that is the role of cities, to really do that. So it's women and cities, and by that we can win the world. Any questions, remarks, thoughts? Dismissed.
We will try.
Hello everybody, thank you for listening. My name is Astrid Reichel. I present our work on behalf of my colleagues Mohammad Rahman, Thomas Rötzer and Stefan Pauleit of the Technical University of Munich. Our work, the potential of earthquake infrastructure, UGI for mitigation and adaptation of cities to climate change, focuses on research in Munich on trees and the ecosystem services that they provide. Urbanization leads to a lot of global urban challenges like the degradation of natural resources, loss of biodiversity and ecosystem services, and then the increase of anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions, which are 80% of urban region. Also other factors are increasing like heat waves, droughts, hurricanes, flash floodings, but also urbanization leads to high density of built-up areas, concentration of infrastructure and people in these built-up areas, and this has often a determinantal effect on the thermal comfort for humans within cities, and we are working on how to increase human thermal comfort by the use of ecosystem services of urban green. Urban forests can provide a lot of varying ecosystem services, ranging from provisioning services, cultural or regulating services like food provision, carbon storage or habitat provision, and we are focusing mostly on climate regulation, carbon storage and runoff reduction. These ecosystem services depend on a lot of factors like the amount of trees, the tree species, the age, structure, and vitality, the layout, like there's a tree row or a cluster of trees, the stand climate at the urban tree stand, building density, soil properties, and many more factors. And we aim to understand the magnitude pattern and processes of these ecosystem services. Therefore, we use a lot of different methods like ecophysiological techniques like sap flow measurements, measuring the water flow within the tree stem, dendrometers, measuring the growth of the tree stem, meteorological methods like we measure the temperature, the radiation, the precipitation, soil science techniques like we use soil water content sensors, but we are also using forest growth and yield techniques. Here you see a fish-eye picture we use to calculate the leaf area index, but we also measure tree crowns, their properties, tree height, and here you can see a picture of a laser scanner. We are also doing modeling, for example, the single tree model city tree and the green CTT-GC model. At the moment and in our past project cut, we have 2 tree labs in Munich in Germany and Beersheba in Israel. And as you can see here from the timeline from the past to today and the future, Munich and Beersheba are very similar in their characteristics. They have both a population growth over the past years more than 20%, 25 for Munich, 27 for Beersheba, and a temperature increase of more than 1.5 degrees, and a high urban heat island intensity of 5 degrees for Munich and 7 degrees for Beersheba. And now I want to show you some results of our studies, just a glimpse due to the time limit. And here, for example, you can see the course of the temperature reduction of a tree from August to October over summer. And you can see that trees, here it's a Tilia cordata lime tree, can provide a tree cooling up to 4 degrees within the tree crown during the afternoon, early afternoon, midday. And you can see on the right side how it looks like, a thermal image. You see that under the tree crown, in the tree crown, under the tree, there's a definite the temperature reduction compared to the outer regions around the tree. And such a 80-year Tilia cordata, as you see from the picture, and which we did our measurements on, can provide a water loss, so a transpiration of 68 liters per day, and so the temperature reduction within the ground can be up to 4 degrees, as said before, but under the knees at the surface level, the soil level, it can be up to 2 degrees. But this is, of course, depending on tree species. We found other values, for example, for the tree, and found different cooling mechanisms over asphalt and grass. But especially transpiration is also depending on the radiation influxes in the crown, like the shortwave and the longwave radiation, affecting either the vapor pressure deficit VPD within the tree crown. At our 2 tree labs in Beersheba and Munich, for example, we found that the radiation in Beersheba is higher compared to the radiation in Munich, affecting the vapor pressure deficit of the tree lab in Beersheba, which is higher than the vapor pressure deficit of our tree lab in Munich. Here you can see the vapor pressure deficit and the radiation inputs over the time of day, peaking both also during the midwinter. At the end, I want to show you that we also do studies on the ecosystem services like here biomass of different tree species over the course of a life of a tree, so from young age to very old age. You see here the results of 4 species, seeing that the patterns of growth and biomass formation vary depending on the tree species. For example, Platanus acidifolia has here the highest biomass formation at an older age, but followed by Tilia cordata with different growth patterns. So this is also affecting other services like the transpiration. You can see on the left side that Tilia cordata is providing more transpiration than Robinia pseudoacacia, depending also on the soil sealing. With no soil sealing, Tilia cordata has up to 80 cubic meter of transpiration compared to 60 cubic meter for Robinia pseudoacacia. But this can be half with a 90% soil sealing. And shading area, we also measured for different tree species here, highest for Platanus acerrifolia, over the whole life of those trees. But you need to be careful because the shading density can be different, peaking often at a low tree age, going on to decreasing over the lifetime. Now I want to thank all my colleagues in the Urban Tree Group and our financial partners. Thank you for listening.